it Riscaminator? How does that go?
Yeah, Drake. So when I signed up for this, I did not expect to do commentary on Mono Blue Merfolk in the second round. But yeah, first of all, on the left side of the board, on Devin Slater's side, we got Dimir Reanimator, usually also called like Rescaminator in Legacy, which is kind of like a hybrid between an very old fan favorite from around 14 years ago, used to be one of the best decks. And now that I think about it, both of those decks 14 years ago used to be the supreme decks in Legacy. Merfolk used to be a tier 1 deck. Blue-Black Reanimator used to be the most feared tier 1 deck. And yeah, it looks like we're going back to the future here. This is literally the kind of matchup we saw 14 years ago, but now we're super tuned with a lot of new cards that came out recently. The thing about why we don't call it Reanimate anymore and more like Rescaminator is this deck, it can hang. This deck can play the mid-range very well. And if you commit too hard to trying to stop the Reanimator plan, which just has an Animate Dead and Reanimate, then you're going to be overrun by like a Grief, by Orcish Bowmasters, or even just like Troll of Khazad-dûm that can come to play, even Hardcast at some point. So it's really tricky. In the first game, expect this to be more about the graveyard, as Devin can be rather sure that Nikachu on the right side, Jonathon Zaczek, is not going to be able to contest that. But going into the second game, we talk about the possibility of sideboards. But I quickly want to talk about Merfolk here, because Merfolk, it technically still does what Merfolk always did. Get out a bunch of creatures, get down Aether Vial, and then just run out the Lords while the opponent cannot block. And it looks like it's... the beauty of it to me is, like, we had all these changes. Like, when I look at this, except for Force of Will, Aether Vial, and Lord of Atlantis, and we don't talk about the lands right now, everything changed. But Lord of Atlantis, a card from Alpha, is still around in the year 2014. And it's
still able to hang. Love it. Tideshaper in turn 1. Notably confident that his opponent's going to have an island is Nikachu. Of course, the Merfolk Master, who we got to see a little bit yesterday playing his modern take on Merfolk. And now here back playing the Legacy version. Get a few upgrades in the form of True-Name Nemesis, Force of Will, and Wasteland. Some of those cards good in this matchup, others less so, as here comes a reanimation effect, it looks like, and I believe this hand is the leftovers are Cavernous Souls, Merfolk Trickster, and Tishana's Sidebinder as Lord of Atlantis, and it looks like the other one drop I can't get a great look at taken as well by the Rescaminator thing, right? This is exactly what you're talking about, the new developments for the Blue-Black Reanimator deck, able to pitch Archon of Cruelty to the Grief and then bring it back into play. Of course, costs 4 life points and a fetch Underground Sea does mean the Tideshaper is upgraded into a 2/2 and is able to attack into the Grief.
Yeah, it is. And I would guess, like, it's actually kind of hard for Devin to say whether you want to block. I would guess so you want to, because it's only ever going to grow. And right now, Jonathon is like winning the race very much so.
Right.
When I looked at the deck list, it's kind of funny. Like, in a way, this Mono Blue Merfolk almost does everything you want to do against this kind of deck, because you as we mentioned this, you can try to fight over the reanimation plan, like you got some kind of counter magic, even early counter magic, and you also have a way to shut down like the big reanimate animation targets in Atraxa or in the Archon of Cruelty in Tishana's Tidebinder, which is like a card I haven't really seen used in Legacy before. It's the one that is still in Nikachu's hand here. Like, you get to basically stifle to counter the triggered ability of Atraxa, and then remove all of its abilities, all of a sudden, like reducing it to just quote-unquote a 7/7, which I guess at that point you can also jump block.
Sure, yeah, I mean, no lifelink, no vigilance, no flying, all that stuff. I mean, that's going to be a big downgrade, even outside of the very iconic and powerful triggered ability from it. So the Tishana's Tidebinder could line up here, and I guess Atraxa not really part of the plan if we're leaving that one around with a double Grief. And Devin Slater, who pondered and missed second land. Trickster who tapped down the Grief means an attack for 4 coming across down to 11. And you mentioned Nikachu here in the lead with the race. Clearly his plan at this point.
Yeah, very much so, and it's only gonna get bigger, right? We already lost 4 life to the Reanimate. We lost some life to the Fetchland here, and Devin all of a sudden, like, finding himself with just 1 land in play, and basically at half his life total, staring down a ton of damage that's gonna come his way anytime soon, especially if we find a Lord, right? So I'm even surprised that Devin, I guess, the Brainstorm gotta hit here. Like, if the Brainstorm doesn't hit here, the game is almost over. There's
one
nothing
land is
great yet.
certainly not looking like it's getting it done. And the counter magic worth nothing with the Cavern of Souls in play. We're talking about Daze's Force of Wills present in this Dimir Re-Scaminator, whatever you want to call it. The Reanimator deck does have multiple copies of counter spells that just don't work thanks to the power of Cavern of Souls. And all 3 drops, as here comes another Grief. No scam for this one, but looks at 2 Tishana's Tidebinders and a copy of True-Name Nemesis, a card that normally I wouldn't call out as being very good. But in this particular matchup where, like you said, it's a little bit more mid-rangey, things slow down a little bit, the True-Name starts to get a little bit better, and now is going to be the take over the redundant Tishana's Tidebinder.
Yeah, also kind of awkward for Devin, as long as what's it called, the Tide Shapers around, no access to black mana either. It's almost I usually try calling these matches too early, but oh my god.
Well, we got Rishadan Dockhand, and that one actually is going to do a pretty good Rishadan Port impression if Nikachu wants to, and tap down the only blue-black source. Now, Wasteland doesn't actually accomplish a lot. We see Devin Slater actually keeping the Wasteland back, interested more in the mana sources than turning off of the Cavern of Souls, even with, Nikachu kind of down on mana. Both players are actually down on mana, and this is kind of the tricky part with Wasteland. You're not really helping yourself that much, even though you don't really want Nikachu to be able to cast these Tishana Tidebinders, but have you. Like, if you just played a land, now the Wasteland actually doesn't really work because you go for the only Tidebinder disaster.
The only thing that you really represent there is basically Brazen Borrower as in petty theft, because that Underground Sea is just an island, right? The way I understand it, it's not tapping for black here. So there's nothing you can really do with that Wasteland other than maybe petty thefting, or I'm trying to come up with anything else. Maybe hardcast Daze if that's what's going
to be. Orcish Bowmasters was on Nikachu's radar, as no attack with the Tide Shaper would suggest potentially not wanting to run that one into any kind of double blocking, and fairly wise as well. Also could do some trickery with the Wasteland and what have you. Clearly is interested in using the Rishadan Dockhand also as well, keeping the mana up for that one. That one has Island Walk. Don't need to worry about that one being blocked because the island's still in play. But is interested, I think, in tapping on this Underground Seas. Here comes Entomb for Atraxa. The window on that one closes pretty quickly.
By the way. I misspoke. I thought the Tide Shaper had turned the Underground Scene to just an island, but you're right. Like, Tide Shaper came down on the very first turn, didn't really do anything other than grow. So we actually do have access to the black mana here, as Devin is casting the Bowmasters. And
this is a great call there from Nikachu. Sniffed out the Orcish Bowmasters with the no cracking of the Wasteland, and that leads to being able to keep his Tide Shaper around. And now an Orcish army and the Orcish Bowmasters itself versus 2 copies of the Tidebinder, the Aether Vial beginning to tick up. And the problem now is that if a reanimation comes down on the Atraxa, Devin Slater could theoretically lead on the Wasteland on the Cavern, so you actually can't respond with the Tidebinder. Now, Devin does have to actually sequence things correctly, but the Tide Shapers, the Tishana's Tidebinders are face up. They're right there. So he knows to play around them, and it's a long time before the Vial can cast them. That's assuming that Nikachu did draw an island, which I did think I saw in his hand. And we'll see exactly what he decides to do with this turn. Not great attacks. Devin Slater down to 9. It is an island, and here is an attack with both. Island Walk means that one's unblockable. 8 damage for sure. We'll see if Devin's interested in the double block.
And not sure what you really want to do here. I guess, you throw them in front of that.
He just pointed and said Island Walk. No thanks. That one just has Island Walk. Doesn't need a Lord. Has it already. And a double block on the Tide Shaper means that the Bowmasters will be cleared. Down to 8 goes Devin Slater. And Tishana's Tidebinders up for Jonathon means that he can stop the Wasteland, but then he can't really stop the Atraxa 2, assuming there's a reanimation as one of the 2 cards in Devin Slater's hand. Now, if there's not, then it's very possible Devin's in a lot of trouble here versus these Tishana Tidebinders.
Thing is, even if so we're gonna do as you mentioned, like, we're first not gonna make sure that Nikachu is not gonna have 3 mana to counter potential to trigger on a Atraxa of a reanimation spell. But now we're going to go to the second main phase, and I guess it's going to be land Animate Dead. And that's going to put Devin into a driver's seat, very much so. That's going to make it so that Nikachu is going to fight tooth and nail to even be able to come back. But is this going to be animated? And it looks that it's not.
Oh, he just wanted to get his fetch off. So we actually wastelanded to force Tishana's Tidebinder just so he can crack his Misty Rainforest. Does not actually have the reanimation. And back to Nikachu we go. Has to be happy not to see an Atraxa in play.
Yeah, he's basically got to fade 1 more reanimation spell. At that point, he's going to have his Wild up to 3, so he's going to be able to counter the triggered ability of any big creature that might come into play. And here he's happy to, just get in.
Bowmasters
He's
number 2.
gonna
All right,
lose.
running the
Okay.
Tidebinder into Bowmasters number 2. Ping plus a block.
She's in the
That's
top,
gonna
yeah,
do-
it's 3-2. Okay, yeah, we're gonna take it out, sure.
Yeah. Oh, before damage, it's Vodalian Hexcatcher. That's going to grow the Tidebinder, save it, and push an extra point of damage. That means the Rishadan Dockhand worth 2 points of damage now. Down to 5 goes Devin Slater. And with this Hexcatcher also representing some counter magic, you look at that one. Counter non-creature spellless control base 1. That can stop any regeneration effects on Atraxa, which means Devin Slater picks it up. And Nikachu, game number 1 in his favor against this Dimir Reanimator with his iconic Merfolk deck. Kind of surprised at the result, not gonna lie to you.
I'm gonna tell you, like, Island Walk secretly the all-star of Legacy. It used to be a really big thing more than a decade ago, but right now, just like getting in for the chip damage here and there to just get the opponent who's already like using their life total as a resource quite a lot down to a point where even if they were to get a creature, you can just like Island Walk past it and win the game before anything even matters. Even if you had like True-Name Nemesis, right? That's something the deck is also capable of.
Being able to be unblockable.
Well,
let's go look at the sideboard here. We got 3 copies of Dauthi Voidwalker, 2 copies of Force of Negation, 2 Hydro Blast, 2 Murktide Regent. Oh, no, sorry. This is, yeah, here we go. 2 Murktide Regent. I was shocked to see that in the Reanimator sideboard. 2 Dismember, 1 Brazen Borrower, 1 Null Rod, 1 Powder Keg, and 1 Unlicensed Hurt. Like I said, very surprised to see Murktide Regents, but what do you like in this matchup? How are we adjusting for Merfolk?
So definitely Powder Keg. That's one that's going to come in, considering that a lot of the Merfolk cards are just scatter around the 2 mana cost. It's funny you called it a Reanimator deck. It's and that's why it's surprising for you to see the Murktide Regent there. I think the number 1 step to the deck, even though we labeled it Dimir Reanimator, it really is a mid-range deck that happens to have a Reanimator plan. And that's why Murktide Regent is there. It's if you want to emphasize the mid-range plan even more, maybe go entirely without any kind of reanimation and take out a couple of those cards. In which case you would bring in like Voidwalkers, you would bring in Murktide Regent, you could bring in like an additional copy of Brazen Borrower or something. So that's a way to do it, and that's why Murktide Regent is there. I don't think this is the matchup for Murktide Regent. It's too easily like basically tapped down by Merfolk Trickster or something. And probably can't race quickly enough. But other than that, yeah, Powder Keg is a card I want to have, and then really not all that much. It's kind of rough, honestly. I'm not sure where you want to go here.
Plan, huh? Not trying to convert to any kind of mid-range stuff.
Like the thing is, mid-range is decent, but if you can't destroy a lot of your opponent's creatures, and I think this list doesn't even play any kind of like fatal push or something. I think there's nothing really
there in the main deck. Or sorry,
but this member is going to cost you dearly, right?
So, right.
It's kind of
black.
hard.
We're Dimir. We can pay black mana for it. It's just not that good.
I guess we could also play like 3 mana to get our Dark Banishing in. But I think Merfolk, as weird as it sounds, might actually be favored in the matchup. Actually, let's check out what Merfolk has in the sideboard.
Yeah, let's see what Nikachu has to work with in his sideboard. So we got 2 copies of Merfolk Trickster, 2 copies of Force of Negation, 2 Dismember, 2 Surgical Extraction, 2 Chalice of the Void, 2 Null Rod, 1 Wasteland, that completes the set, 1 Blue Elemental Blast, and 1 Hydro Blast. What do you like in the Reanimator matchup?
Honestly, not really all that much. There's nothing that jumps out at me as like, oh yes, I definitely want this card. Like one of the traps is to board in too many graveyard hate cards. Like you could bring in Surgicals, they are never exciting. The thing you want against this kind of mid-range Reanimator deck is something that is like incidental graveyard hate. Like my prime example that nobody plays right now for a reason, I guess, because it's underpowered, is Scavenging Ooze, but also Unlicensed Hearse or anything that also works when you don't need to attack the graveyard in the first place. Nikachu doesn't really have anything like that. Of course, being mono blue, it's also kind of hard. So maybe just additional copies of Merfolk Trickster, so you can stop, let's say, the lifelink or the attack on Atraxa or the attack on Archon of Cruelty. If there's anything you want to take out in the first place, like I'm looking at the deck list right now, it's pretty straightforward. Maybe sometimes you take out Lords. I don't think this is the matchup where you take out Lords.
You like
could take out some Dismembers.
Yeah, they seem like fine. I mean, you have good ways to get past that. I don't know. I do like your call out of only making slight changes. Like maybe you want a few of the Surgicals. Maybe instead of Surgicals, you want Forces in case that matters. But, you know, with the mid-range plan, the ability to pivot a little bit, that kind of stuff might not be necessarily, you want to go super hard on it and load up on your combo hate, talking about Chalice, talking about Force, talking about Surgical, all that kind of stuff. You might actually just want to reach more for the Tricksters and try to do this tempo thing where you just kill them instead. So that would actually make a lot of sense to me, shoring up the sideboarding a little bit. I do think there are a few cards you can trim on, and maybe the Dismembers are something you're not necessarily as interested in. But I can tell you what, Nikachu, the Merfolk Master himself, he's gonna have a plan. This is, this Reanimator deck's one of the more popular decks in the metagame, I assume. So I assume that whatever his plan for the matchup is, he's very familiar with it, and he has some intentional sideboarding going on with that. We'll see exactly how he decides to approach this matchup here in game number 2, having won game number 1 pretty decisively. Missing some reanimation effects was the Dimir Reanimator deck, and we'll see if he can get it done again.
It's kind of funny. A couple of weeks ago, I played in a paper tournament. I didn't do too hot. I was at the lower tables, and then I snatched a picture of the person playing next to me, playing Merfolk, which I hadn't seen in so many years. And I sent it to my friend and was like, dude, this is how far down the table I am. Some people around me are playing Merfolk. And I look at Nikachu, making Merfolk like one of the, well, maybe not top tier decks in the form. We're not there yet, but not only making it playable, but making it look very much playable. And I love
making it look effective against the best deck in the format, or at least one of the best decks in the format. I don't want to make any claims. We have new set, we have Outlaws of Thunder Junction. This is, I believe, one of the first legacy events with Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Certainly one of the paper legacy events with Outlaws of Thunder Junction legal. So things can always change, as we've seen with Legacy. New sets can cause some really big waves, and especially as the Magic Online starts to catch up with the paper meta game with cards being printed, like the Warhammer stuff that was missing for years, and we had 2 different meta games and stuff like that. Things took a minute to align. So I don't want to make any claims necessarily about best decks, but certainly one of the top contenders in the metagame. And Merfolk looks very convincing there in game number 1, even having a few things kind of go wrong.
You know what I never expected about Merfolk? Like, we're not playing Silvergill Adept anymore. That card used to be the best deck in the entire, well, at least mono blue Merfolk version. And now it's not even there anymore. And I guess it makes a lot of sense, even though we do have a lot of lords. Silvergill Adept would probably get Bowmastered quite a bit, especially with the
just gets gone down. Out of it. Get a look at Silvergill Adept. The exclusion not present in this Merfolk deck for Nikachu. In really either format. I don't know. Think they were even in his modern decking. Yeah, again, Bowmaster is really probably the big one here, because the big thing with Silvergill Depth is you could play it, you could copy it with Phantasmal Image, you could do stuff like that, get a bunch of extra cards, and most importantly, get a bunch of Merfolk material in play that you can pop up with your lords. If all that's just getting picked off with Bowmasters immediately from the trigger, then that's a disaster, and the card no longer does what it is there to do, and is no longer worth including in your deck. And that's a really smart exclusion for Nikachu, the Merfolk Master himself. Starting with Aether Vial, one of the best starts you can have, as here is an end of turn fetch for the Undercity Sewers. Going surveilling is Devin Slater.
Yeah, the other one in the long run is going to cause so many headaches for Devin. Like, all of a sudden, you have to constantly account for Hexcatcher, for additional lords, even just like another creature coming down at the end of turn, Merfolk Trickstering your creature down. It's so much, and when you basically add it up, how much mana it adds over the course of like the first 5 turns or something, it's worth, like, I don't know, like, forget about Misha's Workshop. We got Aether Vial in here. And that's exactly what you want to see on the first turn.
Forget about Mishra's Workshop. I think there's a lot of people that like to forget about Mishra's Workshop as Aether Vial number 2 entering the fray. And no second land. This is something we've seen pretty commonly with Nikachu's style setups, is just relying on Aether Vial to produce the mana. And like you said, can compete with some of the most powerful turn-over-turn mana producers in the game's history, and part of what makes the powerful uncommon from Darksteel, I believe, originally printed, such an effective tool for Merfolk specifically, and really any of these decks that are very heavy on creatures that align at a specific spot on the curve. Talking about 2 mana, of course, able to just really double your mana production turn over turn. And also, grant a lot of your creatures flash and uncounterable, which matters in this format quite a bit.
Yeah, you know which card Devin wants to see here? He probably wants to see Powder Keg taking out both of the wives.
Oh yeah, just get them both. That's pretty good. Second Undercity Sewers, that's both copies. So we mentioned, the Surveil lands being very strong presence in Modern there as we were covering the finals of the showdown that you just witnessed last round. Here, already getting it done in Legacy. This is round 1, and we're seeing 2 copies of tap lands in Legacy. You can even pick them up with Daze. So many tricks with these lands. Powerful.
Especially in a deck that already has like a Reanimator theme that also allows you to like clean a little bit more of your Brainstorm. And even like in the mid to late game, you've been in those spots, right, where you both are in a top deck war and you top deck a fetch land. You're like, okay, the best I can do is like commit to thinning, I guess, if people want to even like ascribe some value to that. But now all of a sudden, like, okay, we can get some extra value. And getting some extra value here is Devin, as he gets down his Troll of Khazad-dûm, Animate Deading it into a 5/5.
Yeah, 5/5 can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. So I would argue mostly unblockable. I mean, if there's a deck that can block it, it's going to be this one. But at the same time, I'm not sure you really want to be blocking this one. We might just be entering full race mode. Is Nikachu, as he has a handful of lords facing down the powerful 6-mana Swamp Cycler from Tales of Middle-earth. No second land still for Nikachu. Is that a Dismember in his hand? Oh my god, if this is Dismember, that's kind of disastrous.
Yeah, Dismember is gonna give him a lot of value, and also like he's gonna be able to explode onto the board, like even starting this turn, and especially on the next turn. It's kind of funny. Like we talk about how great it is that these survey lands actually have the basic land type, but here it means that you also will enable Island Walk very soon for Nikachu. So the rare occasion where
the lords in the deck granting Island Walk mean all of his creatures are going to be unblockable, and it's going to be a pure race. And I'll tell you what, a pure race is exactly what Nikachu wants.
And that's already what he got. Like, he's going to get down probably like Lord of Atlantis that I saw in his hand at the end of turn. Then both wilds are going to be either on 2. Maybe one is going to take up to 3, which basically represents the Tidebinder. And yeah, what do we have here?
Oh, we're trickstering it. Vial on the beginning of combat. Trickster down the troll. Honestly, could do some cute stuff too with removing the need to block with 3 creatures if he wanted. Does not choose to do so. And in fact, Vial's in another Tide Shaper. So already up to 6 power of damage face up on the board right now. Now, of course, with 2 Vials, more of that can be represented. Get a look at the powerful 2-mana uncommon from the Dominator set, Flash.
Dude, he's got 2 Lords in hand. That's so much damage next turn. You said 6? Yeah, make that more like 12 basically next turn.
It just doubles it. Yeah, it just doubles it. Right, face up doubles it if we choose to deploy both lords on our main phase, which I don't know if there's a reason to wait. Maybe Powder Keg is something you need to start to worry about.
Got 3 lands.
Like, so we do another Lord of Atlantis. Oh, no.
He's got 4 lords. Like, he's gonna rain damage up on Devin like no tomorrow here. Like, the only thing, like, I'm not even sure if there's anything Devin can do other than Powder Keg. Like, Powder Keg would be the dream draw here, but even then we got a couple of one drops. Dude, this is an absolute nightmare for the Dimir Reanimator deck. Like, even if you were good to get a Traxa, it's probably gonna be too slow.
Yeah, here's the Orcish Bowmasters trying to do some blocking, and I think we're gonna wait till after blocks and go ahead and get the Orcish army to that way. It helps the backswing a little bit. You're no longer under the pressure to get maybe this is before blocks. Not clear what the communication there was. We'll see as the life totals are updated just now, but did pick one of the lords and of course went to block, and it looks like before blocks we filed in our first copy of the Lord of Atlantis. Not interested in filing another one. Has a copy of Merfolk Trickster in hand. I think saving that one in case something like a Traxa comes down. We're going to be able to potentially just power straight through any kind of tricks that may exist. That way Nikachu doesn't open himself up to just dying.
The biggest trick that exists is just like deploying more lords and more lords. Like, this is part of why people sometimes call it like the blue burn deck. You literally just get down a bunch of creatures and then you like throw as much damage at your opponent's face as you can, which Nikachu is very much doing this game. And it looks like, especially next turn with the Dismember in hand as well, it's just going to be lights out for Devin very soon.
Yeah, and at this point, this is how you know he's ahead on life total. Lets the troll attack. Lets Bowmasters and the Orcish army attack as well. Just takes it on the nose. I'll take all 7 points. What else you got? If it's nothing else, I think I got you checked. Here's a bunch of lords, and then we might be seeing that reign of lords that you mentioned start to come down as we have a Vial activation on Instep. We'll see if Nikachu's interested in activating it. He's done a good job playing around the various tricks available in the Dimir Reanimator deck so far. Now is activating Vial, awaiting a response. Looks like there will be a response. Second copy of Orcish Bowmasters. Okay. Ping the Lord. We have a third copy of Orcish Bowmasters to pick off the Lord entirely. So played around triple Bowmasters has Nikachu. Well, here's another Lord. And it's Devin's dead. He picks him up.
Oh my god, dude, that was quite something. Like, Devin thought like he could maybe string something together there, and Nikachu was just like, you know what, I just got another lord. Like, I can type it. Lords all the way.
Like Orcish Bowmasters, you think about how they should be very effective against these creature decks, right? Not only can you produce 2 blockers, you're doing some damage to these small creatures that have the potential to grow, but in general, you're trying to stymie that before it can get out of control, and just none of that happened. We drew 3 copies of Orcish Bowmasters, and we're just still immediately overwhelmed with the Merfolk army that Nikachu had assembled, and a convincing 2-0 victory for Nikachu. The Merfolk Master now 2-0 in our legacy trial. You mentioned, a master can make the deck look top tier, and looking top tier it did there.
Dude, I got serious flashbacks to GP Columbus 2010. Let's hear in chat. Like, anybody remember Coralhelm Commander tearing it up in Legacy? Coralhelm Commander, that used to be the card that I loved in the deck. But we're going to ask Nikachu about that. Apparently, he's coming to the booth like any moment now.
I mean, he's the Merfolk Master. I mentioned his thoughts on what you said, Coral Helm Commander. That's the level up one, right? How many years has it been?
Yeah, exactly. Also, Marrow Reachery, that's the one I love so much. Like, you can like, the thing is, like, a lot of tricks you can now pull for 1 less mana. And that's just like how it works in these decks now.
Well, we're going to be getting Nikachu, the Merfolk Master himself, into the booth so we can ask him kind of about not just his like match. We're going to ask about that certainly, but also the development of Merfolk over the years. If there's anybody that I'm sure has a long history of the Merfolk deck that has, I'll say, somewhat of a cult following in Magic's history. Lord of Atlantis, as you mentioned, a card in Alpha, something that people have been entranced by since Alpha, the ability to make these Merfolk unblockable and, you know, kind of get through any blue blockers that could exist. I'd argue has had a cult following really since Alpha, and Nikachu been present for many of those years. Very interested in hearing his thoughts, not just on Merfolk, you know, right now, but also at large as soon as we get him in the booth. Now that was round number 2 of our legacy trial. I believe we have 8 rounds total, and then we have and then our semifinals, our quarterfinals, semifinals, finals. So we have quite a few more rounds of legacy left to play today. So there's a lot more winning that needs to be done. We'll be bringing that a little bit after we get a chance to talk to Nikachu himself as we get things set up here shortly. But while we do that, make sure that if you are watching here and you like Legacy, you want to see more Legacy, you are following here on Twitch. Supporting paper coverage is very important. Having you here watching, having you here with us is very important to us, and it is important to paper coverage as we bring you some every single weekend that we can. And if you want to remove ads, as always, support us a little bit further. Do subscribe. This entire stream, this entire event is also brought to you by Ultimate Guard. Support Ultimate Guard and their products. You can find them in LGS near you, and their katana sleeves, when you can find them, sometimes they can be tough to find because they sell out quick, are some of the best sleeves in the market, and they're some of my favorites. I don't know how much, you know, where you're at, Julian. I don't know the presence of Ultimate Guard products, but they can be kind of hard for us to find because they just sell out so quick.
Oh, really? Is that a problem? I think Ultimate Guard is based in Europe, right? In Germany, even.
Oh my God! So you just have it easy. It's just
we have like
right
easy
there.
access, right? I go to the
they get on a
supermarket,
train and it's right there. That's probably the problem.
Let's go to the Ultimate Guard aisle. Easy, take it.
Well, that's I'm jealous. I'll say that. You know, like I said, when Katanas debuted, I think it was like 2019. They're sleeves that I immediately tried to switch to as much as possible. Then, as they come in, I've like calling LGS is like, please, as soon as you get more Katanas, call me. Like, well, look, we can, man, but you know, they sell out so quick. So that's been something that we've been dealing with, but they have provided us here at the NRG series with products, and the top 16 for the showdown, and I believe for this legacy trial as well, is going to get some products from NRG series themselves on the house, as we have Nikachu, I believe, seated and set up. We can cut down to him. And Nikachu, congratulations! Able to take down Riskaminator in a convincing 2-0. Talk to me about your experience with Legacy Merfolk. I know you're the Merfolk Master. Your decision to bring it today. Talk to me about the adjustments.
Yeah, so I played the deck pretty ritually last year because I was motivated to play some Legacy. I saw there was some potential there, but the problem was then they printed Bowmasters. That was just like absolute game changer. I'm telling you, like Mistcaller, Silver Gill Adept, they're gold in this format. But then when 1 toughness creatures are soft banned, then I have to make major adjustments. Like I didn't play Legacy since last year, and it just so happens there's a Legacy open, so my adjustments, I have to gut all the toughness, 1 toughness creatures from the deck except Hexcatcher. And I wanted to add Tashanda's Tidebinder, because a lot of you know, there's fetch lands, ETBs, activated abilities that you can get people with.
Yeah, I've already talked about, right, how much he broke my heart by like not playing Silver Gill Adept anymore. I used to be a Merfolk player like 14 years ago. That was like my deck back then. I can't believe it's been this long. And like seeing you, who's basically the face of Merfolk, that's an awkward thing to say, I guess, cutting Silver Gill Adept. That's just like, it felt so bad. Like, is it just like not doing it anymore, I guess? Drake even told me you're not even playing it in Modern anymore.
Yeah, it's just a huge tempo loss. You play for 2 mana, you draw a card, it dies to Bowmasters or some other like Lava Dart or anything. 1 toughness creatures are soft banned from Renin 6 and so on. and you can't come back. I'm dying in Modern with tons of cards in my hand. Same thing in Legacy. And what's interesting thing, though, I take out all the 1 toughness creatures, and all of a sudden, Orcish Bowmasters sometimes is really clunky. Like, they can't exchange with any creatures. Like in that last match, my opponent has to play 2 Orcish Bowmasters to kill 1 Lord. And sometimes it might not be able to do it.
Game 2 ended with 3 Orcish Bowmasters in play, and I don't think they actually killed a single creature. So you're talking about these adjustments you made for these formats overrun with Orcish Bowmasters, and they certainly were. We saw that live in your last match, and you looked like your adjustments were incredible. Not only did they, really stop them from killing anything, but they weren't blocking. All the Island Walkers, Rishadan Dockhand having Island Walk, all that kind of stuff, able to still get through. So they weren't even able to line up blocks, much less pick off anything with the ETB. Looks like your adjustments are coming out big, and looks really well set up to battle in an Orcish Bowmasters heavy Legacy metagame.
Yeah, I hope it works out like that. But still, I really like Silver Guild up to help hedge the times I'm down a lot of cards with Force of Will. Force of Will, great card, of course, in this format, but not so good if I have no more cards left in my hand.
I guess it makes sense if you force a True-Name Nemesis into play and you can ride it to victory, right? But I'm wondering, are you gonna bring back the fan favorite? Are you gonna bring back Coralhelm Commander at some point?
What?
Coralhelm Commander. So Julian's just going on. He has his cane. He's talking about Coralhelm Commander from like 2010 or something. He's just like, I want it back. I want to see it back. He's so old. And talk to me. I guess
we used to stream in black and white back then, but yeah.
It's not terrible. It's like a decent mana sink.
You can lie to him. It's okay.
You can be honest with the card. It's that anyway.
Yeah, if the games can go long, the card is pretty good. Unfortunately, not enough games go long in any of these formats that it's useful.
Yeah, unfortunately. I've heard that many times, and it's true. It's just I love the card so much. And yeah, we will see.
Thank you. Congratulations. You have plenty more Magic to play. Any final shout outs you want to make before you go and finish your battling the hero of Lord of Atlantis, I'd argue, Nikachu himself.
Yeah, shout out to the Merfolk community. Always taking some ideas. They're playing some of these formats ritually and like, okay, what's good here? What's bad? What do you feel is good? What do I have to be prepared for? Also, shout out to NRG series. I'm here because of the coverage. Love the coverage. It's the reason to be
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the praise. It's very much what we want to bring, and it is a love letter to the Magic community, the paper Magic community as well. Very happy to have you be a part of that and be a part of our event. Thank you very much. With that, I believe we actually can come back to the booth, and I think we have a game 3 for our backup match. So a little bit of a fair grind, unlike what we saw there with Nikachu and his Merfolk deck versus Reanimator, where it was just a race to get the game over with as quickly as possible. And he mentioned games are over with very quickly. I think here in our backup, we have a little bit of a fair slog in Grixis Delver when Phillips wins side there on the left versus Connor Mullally and his take on 5-color control, starting off with Carpet of Flowers, one of the better cards against Delver, right?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Kana's actually playing a main deck Carpet of Flowers here. Like, that tells you everything you need to know about the Legacy meta game right now. The card is just like so good, especially against Delver, if you can get it on the first turn, that it gets Force of Will turn 1 quite regularly. And as we see here, it even enables a turn 2, basically a cycled Uro. And I don't hate the Daze on that. Basically, it's countering the ability to draw an extra card, to get the land down, to even get the life total. So it makes a lot of sense. You also get the surveil on that on. And I think in the long run, you're not going to be able to daze all that much anyway, considering that there's a Carpet of Flowers in play. So I think that's a quite solid play that people don't make often enough, which is dazing just like an Uro from hand.
Just getting any value of Daze at all. And of course, with no islands, you're picking up an island. So theoretically, the carpet is somewhat mitigated by the fact you're just picking up your own island, assuming the game is going to progress and you're going to play more lands and things of that nature.
Probably going to be a Wasteland.
Literally has a Wasteland in hand. Could play that if he wants to mitigate it further. Do some Wastelanding of his own. Leave him with no islands. Keep attacking with Dragon Trace Chandler, but which is not yet upgraded. I think we're going to try to make that happen with this Ponder. Have that pulled forward. And it is going to be Ponder. Surveil Trigger coming.
Okay. Yeah, makes also sense. like you're basically deciding between you want to gamble on like kind of maybe being like mana screwed, which doesn't really happen all that often. Like I've fallen into the trap plenty of times where I handicapped my own development early on because I felt like, oh, that's how you get these like big mana 5-color decks, right? The thing is they play so many lands, like, oh, whoa, this is 29 lands, but it's a Yorion deck, but that's still quite a lot. So it doesn't really happen all that often. Like if you had some more pressure, then I'd like the Wasteland more, but just getting the ponder down to grow your Dragon Rage channel into a 3/3, that's great. And there comes the Hydro. One of the most beautiful artworks, by the way, in all of Magic. Love that one so much.
Folio artwork taking down the Dragon's Rage channeler. Very much an old versus new as Garfield intended. That blue mana made off Carpet of Flowers. You see Connor pointing that out as Phillips looked at Connor's mana. None was tapped. Carpet of Flowers doing some work, able to get that done. And we're going to buy Yorion as a special action. Can't daze that one. Will Connor, and back to Phillips we go.
But there's also a Hydroblast in the main deck. Like this could technically be a game 1.
Well, we're in game 3, so we have sideboard. I assume there's some Hydroblasts in the sideboard. There is an extra one. So we just got some of the main deck. I mean, you have 40 cards or whatever you get. Sorry, you have 80 cards? Yeah, 80 cards. That's math. You have 80 cards with your Yorion. You can include some sideboard cards in your main deck. You have cantrips to find them. And honestly, that's something that when I've been watching Legacy recently, it doesn't seem like there's a consensus among these up the beanstalk decks. You know, they're kind of all lumped under these 4-color control, 4-color beans, beanstalk control, whatever you want to call it. But it looks like there's a big divergence on the archetypes. Talk to me about the pros and cons, especially in like matchups like this, of being the Yorion deck or not.
So here's the thing to go very quickly over it. That's some kind of consensus, which is basically you should not play Yorion. And you should play basically the 4-color version that doesn't play red. I don't know which kind of like shard, dragon, whatever. We have names for the 4-color version.
Nephilims? I think we're going.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
Nephilim.
After Nephilims, I don't know, but that's kind of like the consensus. You basically play like buck white, as I would call it, and you don't play red because Red Blast is not very good in a format that dominated so heavily by black, by Grief, by Bowmaster, and all that stuff. You will often find yourself not being able to do anything with your Red Blast. Of course, that comes at the cost of not being able to play 4th Erlingas. And now here we got Connor, who is like saying, all of you guys are wrong. We do play red. And not only do we play red, we play 5-color altogether, and we play Yorion. So Connor is out here to like completely destroy the received wisdom of the time. And maybe he's going to prove us all wrong. We will see. I'm always open to players playing something different from what's the established standard. And of course, he's gonna get the 4th Erlingas, and he's gonna get, I would guess, some Red Blast. The thing is, he's only got 2 Red Blasts aside.
Oh, we got Fable the Mirror Breaker. Yeah, we got Fable.
Okay, that's quite greedy. He's playing.
That's greedy. He's got Carpet. It solves all the problems.
He plays Fable of the Mirror Breaker in this deck? No way.
He's got 2 of them.
No, that's impossible.
That's impossible.
Oh, you're right. He's playing 2 copies of Fable. Okay, yeah, that's greed to look. Okay, dude, I'm all for that. Like I hate playing against these super greedy decks, but I love seeing like people going way over the top and being like, no, and I also want 2 Fable of the Mirror Breaker and a large Up the Beanstalk and yada yada, all that kind of stuff. This is some like Up the Beanstalk. We haven't even talked about that card because that card is so good that people made a meme deck that cascades into Up the Beanstalk in Legacy, and then it turned out to be actually playable. So that tells you everything you need to know about that card.
A powerful turn here from Phillips. Deployed a Murktide Regent, a 6/6 off the bat. Also deployed a Tormod's Crypt alongside, his Murktide Regent. Can actually do some tricks with that to exile some instant sorceries, grow Murktide Regent if he wants. Kind of greedy. I assume he's going to want to pick off this Uro that is in Connor Mullely's graveyard and is going to wait on that. Doesn't have to worry about it being escaped quite yet. And did have a little judge call there. Not clear what he was asking about. A lot of little micro interactions that come up with Tormod's Crypt. So it could be anything. As here comes Lorraine revealed hard cast thanks to the mana from Carpet of Flowers.
You know what Connor's also playing? He's playing, I think, a copy of Eagles of the North. Like, dude, at this point, I'm not convinced that this is just the cards I own deck. That happens to be like a proper
There's
archetype.
2 Solitudes. He's just making the numbers up. Just rolling some dice, seeing what the numbers make sense. As here comes Swords to Plowshares, the very powerful 1-mana spell, iconic also from Alpha, coming down to answer the Modern Horizons 2 Blue Dragon. Exile it goes. 6 life points coming Phillips' way. He cracks Tormod's Crypt. That takes care of Uro. And a great turn for Connor. 3 cards from the Lord revealed. Cast the Swords to Plowshares. Did not get dazed or anything. Resolved right away. And back to Phillips. Empty board. Connor reloaded on cards. Phillips needs some help here.
Yeah, and a lot of help he actually does need, because Connor has got so many ways to just pull ahead in the game, right? He's going to find some kind of Uro, maybe even just like Triumph of St. Catherine. He's got Yori in hand to even just like get a big creature out there at some point. And as soon as he finds up the Beanstalk, Phillips is fighting such an uphill battle that I'm not sure he's going to be able to like come back against it unless he finds some kind of pressure that he needs to get down. I mean, that's the age-old game, right, of tempo against control. If you can kill them while they have 7 cards in hand, it doesn't really matter how many cards they could have their entire deck in hand. But if you don't, then they're slowly but surely going to grind you out with their additional value as you end up drawing just like a couple of creatures that at best trade 1-for-1 and usually don't when up to Beanstalk is involved. We're going to try to Wasteland Connor out, might as well. Not really casting all that much other than that. But
Carpet of Flowers solving a lot of Connor's primary game plan. You see him point to that, making 2 mana. Lots of cards to work with. Is number 6 on our leaderboard, Connor Mullally, somebody well known here on the NRG series, part of the RIW crew. You can see him in a nice little RIW polo there. A lot of their crew does come out to our events, and Connor, an ex-player of the year, I believe 2022, but I could be wrong, is there is Triumph of St. Catherine cast once again using some of the mana off Carpet of Flowers. That makes 5 mana, 1 mana left to pay for Daze, and there's a very powerful 5/5 life-linking creature from the Warhammer 40k set, relatively new to Magic Online. A lot of stink about that one not being there.
Yeah, and that's basically a win condition in itself. Even if it doesn't like kill Phillips right away, even just the life gain and the inability of Phillips to race it makes it so that, once again, unless you already have some kind of established board presence, it doesn't even matter if you're able to, throw 2 burn spells at Triumph of St. Catherine to maybe get it temporarily off the board. So I think the only way for Phillips to still take this is to maybe get another big Murktide and hope that Connor... Dude, I can't even tell you like which kind of hand you could construct that Connor would be holding here that Phillips can beat, which is always like the roughest position, because even if like when you're behind, you try to construct the opponent's hand in a way that you can still win and then play accordingly. But right now, I even struggle for like come up with any kind of sequence of cards that Connor could have drawn over the last couple of turns that allow Phillips to win the game. And Phillips was just like digging deeper and deeper and not finding anything. I would guess he's gonna find like a lot of like Dazes, maybe more Wastelands, apparently also more cantrips.
And cantrips not so good. I mean, thankfully no Bowmasters or anything present in the game right now. That would be pretty problematic, resolving all these cantrips. I believe 3rd Brainstorm of the game. But we see, I mean, the 5/5 white life-linking creature, actually a pretty big problem for the Delver deck. I think we see Pyroblast and Lightning Bolt, 2 very traditional removal spells present in the red decks in Legacy. Neither of them answer Triumph of St. Catherine.
Both of those decks, cards like at an all-time low when it comes to like the value that you're going to get out of them in Legacy right now. So not surprised that Phillips just like passing here. It's basically killing you on the inside, right? You have 2 cards that don't really do anything. You just play the Brainstorm. Yes, you're going to get the fetch land off, but you need something. And right now, you better need like 2 or 3 copies of that something that you're going to draw. I'm not sure that's going to happen here. So Connor in a great position.
Yeah, and then he can continue. Remember, we picked up Yori, and so like that could be a big, large flying blocker. Now that one does get answered by Pyroblast, but if we spend all of our resources trying to get this Triumph of St. Catherine into play, just for it to trigger and go back into your deck, that's a pretty brutal sequence. You ideally like to find a way to get it gone for good, or just have it checked with something like a Murktide Regent, where it can no longer attack. But Murktide Regent, very susceptible to Connor's Source of Plowshares, really looks like he's surgically developed his game plan to answer everything Phillips got going on, from the Carpet of Flowers to the Triumph of St. Catherine to having the Source of Plowshares and the stuff for the Murktide Regents. This looks to be a pretty good setup for Connor here in Game 3, as these players are still battling it out for who will win round number 2 between the Legacy Classic of Grixis Delver and the relative newcomer, I'd say, of the Beanstalk control, 5-color control type archetype. Like you said, Connor the Greedmaster, diverging from all the control decks. So I don't want to say it's like an established. I think it's a newcomer, I'd say.
But the thing is, like, if you can escape from the first, like, let's say 4 turns without any kind of real damage, like, I mean, look at Connor, he's sitting at 22 after 4 turns. Like, what is this? And you're going to make it so hard for the Grixis Delver to ever come back. Like, people sometimes try, like, funny stuff. It doesn't really work, like having Blood Moons in the sideboard or something. That's not really a thing. And that's part of why these 4 or 5 color decks are somewhat frustrating at times, because even if you want to beat them, there's nothing you can really like put in your sideboard in Legacy that's at least somewhat reasonable that makes you a lot better against them. And I mean, that's how it often works against control decks. Like sometimes people play like Winter Orb or stuff, or try to get there with like creatures that like True-Name Nemesis. But all of that, not that great in Legacy in the first place, and also not that great against 4-color control decks, especially not against the deck playing Carpet of Flowers, I would guess. But
yeah, I would certainly imagine the Carpet of Flowers solving a lot of Connor's problems, as Phillips does cast Orcish Bowmasters, maybe a little late to the party, as Connor has already resolved Lorraine Reveal and Uro, all these kinds of things. And an Orcish Bowmasters still on end step after Phillips cast his is just about the disaster scenario, right? One of the best answers, as the adage goes, to Orcish Bowmasters is your own Orcish Bowmasters. And that clearly seems to be what Connor is going for here. We'll see if Phillips has any response.
Yeah, I guess that was one of the ways for Phillips to try and still get back into the game, is to catch Connor like on a Brainstorm, to grow your own orc army and eventually grow it bigger than the Triumph of St. Catherine. But that's rather wishful thinking. I guess that actually was one of the lines that he could have hoped for developing. Of course, it didn't. And now we
have to stifle the Bowmaster's trigger to keep your own around. That does stop the Orc army from coming around, but now any additional drawing that you do will come at a tax of losing your Bowmasters, and that's still a tough spot to be in. I mean, we can bolt it down, but then we've traded Stifle and the Bolt just to keep our own cards around. Still a good exchange for Connor, who's very ahead in cards right now. We'll see how Phillips is going to progress. It's going to be Dragon's Rage Channeler. I see Artifact Creature, Instant Land. That's Delirium. That is a 3/3 flying Dragon's Rage Channeler.
Yeah, if we can get 4 more copies of those, maybe we can start trying to raise it.
He needs red mana for the 4 copies of those. Racing Triumph of St. Catherine, notably very difficult, as it is a 10-point life swing between the 5 damage it deals and the 5 life linking points it gives you back. Very difficult card to race, as here comes a Lightning Bolt on Orcish Bowmasters. To the graveyard from the Surveil goes Scalding Tarn. An attack for 2, down to 23. Goes Connor, still not even back at the starting life total as we move back to Connor's turn.
No, I actually figured it out. So these Grixis Diver decks, actually, they need to splash white so they can play Pacifism on this Triumph of St. Catherine. That's how you deal with it.
Pacifism. Wow, yeah. The new hot legacy deck. There has to be like a 1-mana Pacifism that works. There's no way actual Pacifism is the best thing you have going on.
I'm actually trying to think about something. Is that like something Chained to the Rock or that?
Yeah, there you go. Chained to the Rocks, Enchant a Mountain. Wait, that exiles. That's not a Pacifism.
we're slowly going
to play Source of Flashers. What are we talking about?
Okay. So, dude, Hardcast, Solitude, another lifelinker. This is the lifelink deck, and that's definitely not where you want to be when you're up against when you're playing against a tempo deck against this. I even was going to talk about
a keyword
how
pretty good against Delver across history. Adding more, strong.
Yeah.
And I think Phillips has seen enough. Daze with the Carpet of Flowers in play, Wasteland with Carpet of Flowers in play, and Pyroblast doesn't answer any of these white creatures. Really showcases Connor's plan for the Grixis Delver matchup being very effective. These white creatures, these enchantments that solve your mana problem, very difficult for Grixis Delver to get off the board. And Connor, I mean, took a little while, but was able to execute a very convincing victory over Grixis Delver there in game number 3.
I wonder how much we're going to see of the deck going forward. Like it's somewhat taxing to play at times, because you usually play very long games, and even though you won at some point, you still have to like convert it into a win, which sometimes is a bit mentally draining. But I definitely want to say these kinds of usually 4-color decks are a fan favorite. Now seeing Connor like play 5 colors, I'm not surprised. That's just like the natural progression of Greed and Legacy. If we could play a 6th colors, people would sometimes do that. So we will see how I guess Modern Horizons 3 hasn't been fully spoiled yet, right? Or at all. So maybe there's going to be a 6th color.
Just a few leaks, I think.
Yeah.
Well, either way, that will do it for round number 2 of our Legacy trial. We will be back here very shortly with round number 3 in our Legacy 5K trial. These players and Connor, number 6 on our leaderboard, now advancing to 2-0, is going to be looking to pick up some extra points. Of course, looking for his qualification to the NRG champs. And if you want to qualify for the NRG champs and you're not at this event, well, it's already too late. But you can find yourself in Indianapolis in May, where we will be as well for another 10K Modern Showdown. We had one of those just earlier this morning, won by Dominic Harvey. If you want to be interviewed, you want all of the glory and the goodies that come with winning a showdown, find yourself in Indy that Saturday 10K Showdown. It's a double showdown weekend, though. Sunday, grab your friends, and you can play Standard, Modern, Pioneer for a 10K team showdown where the entire finals will qualify for the NRG champs. And of course, all the winners will qualify for the champs. The entire finals will qualify for the regional championship. So a lot of invites on the line for that weekend. And then if you can't make that event, and there's still one more in season 1, you can find yourself in St. Louis in June for a 10K Pioneer Showdown. Going to get to play some high stakes Pioneer. Again, the winner will go to the NRG champs. The entire top 4 of these showdown events does qualify for the regional championship, along with many other points and money and goodies that come with that. And then on Sunday is a modern trial. If you can't get enough of the modern action, there will be a 5K modern trial akin to this legacy one we are covering now. So plenty of season 1 left to play. If you want to punch your ticket to the NRG champs, it's not too late. And these events are going to be great events. And I expect to see Connor among many other people at those events as well. So make some plans, make it out Indianapolis into St. Louis, May and June, respectfully. And like I said, that'll do it for round number 3. We're going to take a quick break, and then we will be back for round number 2. We'll be back for round number 3 very shortly.